Welcome back. So I used Google last time in order to get some information, but what if you want to dive into the code yourself and figure out the information on your own? There's a good chance to do that using debugger. So that's what we're going to try and do. The next one I want to solve is this one, the route that's going to pass in a template. Now we need to both figure out that it's actually a route attribute and also what template is being passed in, because I want to make sure that it's this one being passed in, because that has a lot to say. If somebody by mistake put in controller instead without the square brackets, actually, what would happen is actually it would end up having a route of API/controller and not the route of API/order, which is what the square brackets actually mean. So if somebody did this by mistake, we would have an issue later on. We need the square brackets in order to kind of show that it's the order route that we want to show right here. Okay, how to do that? Well, let's start with just making what we had last lesson. So I'll jump back to my controller test down here, and I'll just copy this part because that made perfect sense. This way we can get the controller, right? That's how we could get that information about the actual attribute. Instead of having the API controller attribute, if we go back in the order controller, we can see we need the route attribute right here. If we go into that one, you'll see that, of course, the name is route attribute. So that's the one I want to look for right here in my test. Jump back to the test, I'll put that in there, and now we should have the correct attribute. That's perfect. Now we can make the final assert right here. We'll just put in an assert right here. In the assert, what we're going to do is actually we're going to assert not null again, like we did last lesson, and say the attribute should not be null. Happy days. Let's try and run the test. Run unit test. And now that should actually fail, of course, and then we can go and add the route attribute right here. So let's go back to our code. In the product controller, we'll add the route attribute right here. There we go. We won't pass any template right now because I've not specified any test for that. Let's go back to the controller and let's try and rerun the test now. And there we go, run unit test. Well, hopefully now we get a running test because now the attribute is not null anymore. And the final thing I need to figure out now is how do I test the template, because it was like when you look in the order controller, we need to put in this extra template information right here. So how do I test that and do a test driven? Well, I'm going to stay in the same test. Now, some might argue that you need a new test for this, but I'm just going to be kind of lazy and just add an extra test right here. What I need is a new assert down here that can kind of explain the name right here. So it's going to be, we can do an equal. I expect there to be a name of, it was controller, API / and then square brackets controller. That's the name I'm looking for right here. So let's hope we can find that inside the code somewhere, right? The template, if we go back up here, it should be API controller like this. So let's hope we can somehow find that. I don't know how to do it, so let's just put in a blank string here for now and put in a breakpoint. Now you're going to use a breakpoint to find more information about how from an attribute we might be able to find the template name. So I don't go to Microsoft right now and check out the documentation. I just use the debugger locally in my code. And the debugger is extremely powerful, especially when you're using test-driven development. Because again, you don't have to look at anything except this very simple example of code, and from that you can get a lot of information. Let's try and right-click this guy and just say debug selected unit test, and then I'll hit the breakpoint that I put right here with the small circle, red circle right there. And when I do that, I can actually see information again about the attribute. And with the attribute, I can see the information about the template. So it seems it's very simple. An attribute just has a template. So what I'll do right here, instead of saying a blank string, it's going to be attribute.template. Oh, I can't do that. Why can't I do that? That's weird. It says it's here, but I can't find it. It's because we need to kind of explain the attribute is not just a basic attribute anymore. It's actually of the type route attribute, or else that template won't be available. So what I'll do is before I do this, I'll just create actually let's just do it with the current attribute. I'll convert it, so I'll say route attribute right here equals, and I'll say attribute as route attribute right here to kind of do a conversion so it knows it's a route attribute. Now that it knows it's a route attribute, we can actually say .template. Now it's available. Happy days. And that's because the template is only available for the route attribute. It's not available for any of the other attributes out there. So now that we add the route template, let's try and just debug once more just to see what actually, if we solve the issue right here and we now have a route template. It seems we do. Let's just press continue right here and see if we can get through the unit test. And there we go. Now we have a failing test, which makes perfect sense because we don't have that route attribute template name in there yet. So that's the final thing we need to do. And since I already have the name right here, I'll just copy this and I'll go into our production code and add that to our product controller right here with the template name. And I'll just rerun the test. And this time I'll just do it without the debugger because now it should actually run because I've just again test driven an entire controller. Yay, I did it! Next, we're going to try and look at the different methods inside the controller. See you next time. Bye.